Hey, what's up musers? This is John at Muse for You, here to help you build awesome websites without code. And I have a really exciting video tutorial for you today. I'm going to be showcasing probably one of my favorite widgets just because of what it does. The widget is called Muse Morph SVG Morphing, and it is powered by Greensock's Morph SVG plugin. So we have a demonstration of the widget here. As you can see, the different SVGs are morphing into each other. And it's very customizable. All the colors are changing as it morphs. You can change the way it morphs. You can change the easing of the morph. You can change the duration of the morph. You can morph between just 2 SVG elements, or you can morph up to 8, or you can morph up to 9 SVGs and have 8 different morphs between the SVGs. And you can reverse the morphing as it plays. So once it plays forward, it'll play backwards as well. And you can add play buttons to control when the Morph SVG or the Muse Morph plays. So this was a lot of fun working on this widget. I actually teamed up with Greensock to be able to offer you this widget because this is a widget that's using the Morph SVG plugin by Greensock. This plugin is part of the Greensock subscription, so it's not available as part of the Muse for You subscription. This is the only widget that is not in the subscription, but you can access it or you can purchase it through the Muse for You shop. So I'll show you how to access this widget. So I'll simply go to museforyoushop.com, and then here I'll click on the pop-up. And then here is the Muse Morph SVG morphing widget powered by Greensock's Morph SVG plugin technology. So I'll click here, and as we can see here it says this is the only widget not part of the Muse for You subscription. You can purchase it here. Here's the price, and here is the widget. It is $22 and you get the widget. So if you did want all the widgets in the shop, you could subscribe for $39 a year and get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here, and then you can additionally purchase the Muse Morph SVG morphing widget. So here is the widget, and I've kind of went over what I described here. And the features include, I'll kind of repeat it, you can create a single morph between 2 SVG elements. You can morph up to 9 SVG elements in a sequence. You can use shape index technology to select at what point you would like the SVG to morph. You can change the color of each SVG as it morphs. You can change the duration of each SVG morph. You can select the easing for each morph, repeat morph. Yeah, you can repeat the morph. You can infinitely loop the morph sequence. You can reverse play the morph. You can set a delay between each morph. You can add play buttons. It works in conjunction with Adobe Illustrator, and I'll go over that in this video tutorial. The SVG responds to the browser width, so it's fully responsive. It works in responsive design or fluid width design in Adobe Muse, and it works in adaptive design in Adobe Muse. And it works on desktop, tablet, and mobile. And you can trigger the morph on load, on hover, on click, and on scroll. So it works with Illustrator. You create the SVG elements in Illustrator, and then you copy the SVG code into Adobe Muse. You add the widget, style with the widget options, and that is it. And here are the widget options here to the left, and here's what we'll be working with. You'll see when all the SVG elements are layered on top of each other, it kind of looks like this, and then you paste it into Adobe Muse with the edit HTML function in Adobe Muse, or the object insert HTML. You go to object and insert HTML and paste the SVG code in there, and I'll go over that in this video tutorial. So I'll go to preview again just to show you that it's responsive. Because it is an SVG image, it works just like an SVG image, and it responds to the browser width. So it looks good there. It's fully responsive, and I have it on my phone here. So if we look on my phone, here it is on my phone, and we can see that it works beautifully. It works perfectly on mobile devices. I have an iPhone 5S, and it works really great. So it works on desktop, tablet, and mobile. Okay, so that's the overview of the widget. So we'll go ahead and recreate the sample website with these morphing animals. So I'll go ahead and get right into it. So we have different animals here: swan, a moose, or a deer, and different animals here. So we'll get started. I'll go into Adobe Muse. I'll go to File, New Site, and then I'll click OK. and I'll double click on the home page. And here I have the website. Okay, now before we start adding the widget or working with the widget, we actually need to create the SVG elements in Adobe Illustrator. So I have an image here that I've downloaded from Adobe Stock. So I'm going to open in Adobe Illustrator. So I'll right click, open in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, and here I have the image. There's quite a few different animals here. So all I have to do here is create an artboard. So I'll go to File, New, and I'm going to create an artboard that's 500 pixels by 500 pixels, 500 pixels in width by 500 pixels in height. It really doesn't matter what size the artboard is because you can resize the SVG once it's in Adobe Muse. So I'll click OK. 500 by 500 is just a nice size to work with when pasting the SVG elements. Okay, so I'll start with this bear here. I'll just copy the bear. I'll hit Command C to copy and then paste into the artboard here. And I'll resize the bear to the width of 480 and I'll center the bear right in there. That looks good. And then I'll pick another animal. Let's do this moose right here. Paste that in there, and again I'll resize the width of the moose to 480, and because the width and the height are constrained, the moose just gets bigger in width and height there. And then I'll do we'll do the swan here. Paste that in there. For the width I'll say 480, and that's too big for the swan, so I'll say 400, maybe even 350. You want to do it in proportion to each other, so when it's morphing, the sizes will be relative how you have them here. So you just want to make sure that some of the animals or some of your SVG elements aren't too big. So then we'll do this fox here, paste that right in there, and then I'll say we'll say 400 for the fox, or maybe 480. You can be a bit bigger, just like that. Yeah, it looks good. And then we'll say this bird here, or this crane. I hope I'm saying these animal names correctly. For the height, we'll say 480 because the height is bigger than the width, and let's say 400. So because the swan has, or the crane has more height, I just changed the height instead of the width initially. So because if it were to get wider, the height would get really tall as well. And then we have a squirrel here, so we'll add the squirrel, and we'll say 350. Yeah, that looks good. I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 animals. I'm going to add 9 animals, so we're going to use all of the morphing in the sequence widget. Okay, so we did the crane. Let's do this bird here, and I'll say 400 for the width. Oh, that's perfect. Looks good. And we have this little what do you call a baby deer? I forget, but there it is. I think that's a baby deer. All right, and let's see. So we have the fox, the crane. Let me see how many animals I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more animal. Let's do the rabbit here. That'll work. And we'll say 400. Nope, that's too big. Say 350 for the rabbit, still too big. We'll say 300. All right, that looks good. Okay, so we have 9 SVG elements. So once you've layered all your SVG elements on top of each other, the next step is to work with the layers panel. If you don't see the layers panel, you can go to Window and click on Layers. So I'll click it again, Window, and then Layers. And all of your elements will be under Layer 1. And if you notice, we have these different elements, these different animals here in the layer. So we have the rabbit, the deer, the bird, the squirrel, the crane, the fox, the swan, the moose, and the bear. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can add up to 9 SVG elements or SVG images. If you didn't want that many, you could use less than 9 as well. But I just wanted to use all of them for this video tutorial. So those are the 9 images there, and each SVG has to be on a path, or has to be a path SVG element. It can't have multiple paths. So if we notice for this baby deer here, it has 3 different paths in the layers. If it has this little arrow here, you don't want that. So To remove this layer, we want to turn the SVG element into a compound path, so all the paths are connected and it's just one path and it's not multiple paths, because in order for it to morph, it can only be one path within the SVG. So to convert this into a compound path, we simply select the element. So you can select this circle to the right of the element in the layers panel, and then we'll go to Object, Compound Path, and we'll click Make. And now we notice we don't have that little arrow next to the image because all the paths are connected for the image. And the same for this bird here. We'll click on the circle here to select it, go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. All right, and there we see we don't have an arrow for the bird. And then the same for the crane here. So I'll go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. And I have to select it. So yeah, Object, Compound Path, and Make. There we go. And then for the fox, I'll select it, go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. And then for this moose here, go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. Then for the bear, I'll go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. So all of the elements are a compound path. The only thing with this bird, I see that the fill has been taken out. So let me just take a look at that. So this bird doesn't have a fill, but that's actually okay because the widget actually adds its own fill to the image. So you notice that all of these elements are brown. It doesn't matter what color the elements are in the SVG because you can change the colors within the widget. So that's a really great feature. You can just change the fill color in the widget. So there we've taken 9 animals from this vector here, from this image, and we've layered them to create our SVG elements. Okay, so once you've added all of your SVG elements, what you need to do, or the next step, is to rename all of the elements. So if you double click on here where it says, it's saying compound path, but we can't see the whole thing, but it says compound path. What you do is you double click and you rename it to Morph 1. So we're going to rename all of these layers Morph 1 through Morph 9. And the last one is called Last Morph. So I'll double click, I'll say Morph 2, and you want to start from the bottom because it goes from the bottom up in the sequence in which you've placed them. And I'll say Morph 3, and I'll say Morph 4, Morph 5, Morph 6, Morph 7, and Morph 8, and the last morph is Last Morph. All right, so we have 9 different SVG elements. We have Morph 1 through 8, and the 9th element, or the last element, is called Last Morph. And you only need to add Last Morph if you have 9 different SVG elements. Okay, so there's our SVG elements. So that's kind of creating it in Adobe Illustrator. We've done that part. So the next part is to save it. So we'll go to File, and we'll go to Export, and then here we can save the SVG. Here for the format, you'll select SVG. Initially it's set to PNG, but you can set it to SVG, just like that. And you can name the SVG anything. So I'll just say SVG image, and then I'll click Export. And you can look at these options here that I have. These work really well. It's minified, it's responsive, and it just makes the code not as much within the SVG. Here you actually don't need to save the SVG. You can just click on Show Code, and it shows you the code for the SVG. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic, and Scalable Vector Graphics, and most browsers now support SVG. And just as a quick demonstration, I'll just go to caniuse.com, and I'll just type in SVG, and all this green is all the browsers that support it. So we can see IE8 is not supported, but not many people are using that these days. And we see the green is all of the browsers that do support it. So it looks like like every browser supports it. Android browser for 4.3, partial support, but that's okay. And yeah, like all the new operating systems and even recent versions support it. So that looks good there. Most browsers support SVG. So we've clicked on Show Code here. So we want to hit Command A to copy all the code, and then Command C or no, Command A to select all the code, and then Command C to copy the code. And this is where we'll start working with Adobe Muse. So I'll go into Adobe Muse, I'll go to Object, Insert HTML, and then I'll hit Command V to paste. And yep, and then click OK, not enter, but OK. And there is the SVG image, and I can actually make this as big as I want. And there it is. Okay, so right now it just looks like, you know, a bunch of SVG elements layered on top of each other. And this is where the Muse Morph comes in. So I'm going to go into my library panel. If you don't see your library panel, you can go to Window and click on Library. So yeah, I'll click on Library to bring up the library panel. And then I'll just type in Muse Morph. And the first one we want to add, or the first widget, is the Add First Muse Morph. So I'll click, hold, and drag and place onto my Adobe Muse website. And you can just place this at the top here. So I'm going to add the sequence first, so the Muse Morph sequence. You can do single sequence, you can do single sequence or sequence with shape index, and I'll show the shape index in after I show the sequence. With shape index, it's a little bit more advanced. It actually lets you select at what point you want the SVG to morph. So for now, I'm just going to insert sequence, and then we'll get into the more advanced with the shape index. So here are the widget options. We have instance number. If you have multiple instances, or if you have more than one SVG morph, you'll just change the instance number from 1, 2, 3, and so on for however many you have. You can select sequence starts on load. Select sequence starts on load, on hover, on click, or on scroll. You can enable reverse play or continuous play on hover. Continuous play on hover. I'll show that because it makes more sense when I show it. You can set a delay for the start of the sequence morph. You can repeat it. -1 repeats the morph infinitely, and then you can select, if you select 2, it'll repeat twice, 3, and so on. You can set a repeat delay, so after it finishes, how much time you want it to wait before it starts over. And this is all in seconds, so 1 is 1 second, 2 is 2 seconds, and so on. You can set a time scale, so if it's playing a little bit too slow, the normal rate is 1, but if you set it to like 3, it'll play 3 times as fast there, and 3, 4, and so on. You can just set the speed higher for the entire morphing. You can set the on-scroll offset from top, so you can have it, if you select trigger on scroll, you can select from what point from the top of the browser you want the morphing to begin, and you can repeat the morph on scroll. So every time the user reaches a certain point in the browser, the element will start morphing, and I'll demonstrate that in this video tutorial. And then we have the morphing. So the way that this widget works, it works in sequence. So morph 1 is the first element, and then we have the morph, and then morph 2. So you need morph 1 and morph 2 to achieve this morphing in the middle. And you need morph 3, you need to enable morph 3, you need to enable morph 3 to have this morphing work. So maybe to simplify it a little bit better, so if I want just one morph, I'll add the morph element here, then I'll select the element here, and we actually don't need to select enable morph 2. The only time you need to enable morph 2 is if you want to trigger this morphing here that goes to morph 3. And if you have any questions about that, let me know, but I will make that a little bit more clear as I showcase the widget. Okay, so I actually didn't change anything in the widget, and the morphing is going to work. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and we can see we have morphing. I probably should have showed that right away, but just to show you that it works right away, this will help me explain what I just explained before. So right now we only have morphing between morph 1 and morph 2. So morph 1 is the bear, and morph 2 is the moose. And if we go into the widget options, the only reason we have those morphs is because we haven't enabled morph 2, and morph 2 would morph between morph 2 and morph 3. So if we click enable morph 2, we go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, we're going to have morph 1, morph 2, and morph 3. That looks great. And we have it set to reverse play, so the animations will play in reverse. Looks great. So if we wanted all 8 morphings, we just go to each morph and we just enable it right in there. Just like that. So we have morph 4, morph 5, and morph 6, Morph 7, and Morph 8. If you notice for Morph 8, we have this last element ID, which is called last morph, which is the 9th image, or the 9th SVG element that goes between Morph 8 and then it morphs here with these options, and then last morph. Okay, so I'll preview page in the browser, and we're gonna have all of the morphing start, just like that. So if you noticed in one of the elements, I think it was the bird, it didn't have a fill, but it actually gets a fill. There, we just saw the bird, it actually fills because you can change the color, the fill color with the morphing. So we have the colors changing and the different animals morphing into each other. Looks great. Okay, so there's the morphing. We basically covered all the important steps to adding the morph. We went through Adobe Illustrator to create the SVG elements, and then we added the SVG. We saved the SVG and added it to Adobe Muse by going to Object, Insert HTML, and then we dropped the add first, the Muse Morph add first, the add first Muse Morph, and then we added the sequence, and then we enabled all of the morphing for all of the SVG elements. Okay, that looks good there. And then I'll just show some of the widget options. So between Morph 1 and Morph 2, these are the options for the morph. Here's the color change, here's the initial color for the first morph. If I change this, the initial color would be different. So I just changed it there. We can set the duration, we can set the easing option. We have these options for easing. We can set the easing type. I can set it to ease in and out, and we can set the offset amount. So how long you want to wait before it morphs to the next element. So I'll just go to File, Preview Page, and Browser. There it's orange. Oh, and we set an offset for the first. So for this one, we don't want an offset for the first morph. We set it to 0, but let's say we wanted an offset for the second morph, or for the morph between the first morph and the second morph. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and then here it's going to wait 2 seconds because we set an offset of 2 seconds before the next morph plays. And then these don't have any offset, so they play right at one after another. Okay, and if I wanted to change the timescale for the entire morphing, I can change it to like 3, and we'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and we can see it's much quicker, and we just have the morphing just like that. So you can really have a lot of fun with this, and set the speed of how you want it to morph. Okay, so I've gone over most of the widget options here, the morphing widget options, and the different widget options there. So now I'll go into the triggering the morph. So in the first one, it's initially set to on load, but we can also set it to on hover, and I'll set the timescale back to 1, and I'll make no offset for here, just like that. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and when I hover, it morphs. So as you can see, I'm hovering and it starts morphing, and if I move my mouse, it continuously plays, just like that. If I move my mouse off the element, it plays. If I go back on top of it, it restarts, just like that. So if the user hovers over it and then they move around the website, it'll keep playing. And that's the continuous play on hover. If I uncheck this and I go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, every time I move my mouse off the element, it'll stop the morph. Okay, so that's the on hover option and the on hover continuous play option. Okay, and then we can do it on click. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and I'll click. Every time I click, it restarts the morph, just like that. Looks good. And then we'll do the on scroll option. So I'll go to on scroll. We'll start it when it hits the bottom of the browser. So the on scroll offset from top is at 100%. So when the SVG elements reach the bottom of the browser, because it's 100% from the top, it will start to morph. So I'll just move these elements down the website and add a bit more scrolling space. Okay, so I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and I'll scroll down, and it starts morphing when it reaches the bottom of the browser, the elements there. If we set it to 50%, and then we go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, when I scroll, we can see it hasn't started morphing yet because it hasn't reached 50% of the browser. I scroll, and right there it starts to morph. Looks good. All right, perfect. And I can restart the morphing. I can repeat the morph on scroll. So every time I scroll out and scroll again, it'll restart the morph. Looks good. And if you didn't want it to restart, you could just uncheck repeat morph on scroll. And then I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. And I'll scroll and it starts morphing. And it keeps morphing. It doesn't restart the morph on scroll. Just like that. Looks good. Perfect. Okay, so I've pretty much covered everything in the widget. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I'm not going to go over the play buttons here, but basically if you wanted to add play buttons for the morphing, you just create any element in Adobe Muse and assign it the graphic style, either play, pause, reverse, resume, or restart. Okay, so those are the options there, and enable reverse play just allows the morphing to start playing in reverse once it finishes playing in a sequence. Just like that. And if you didn't want all 8 morphings, you'd just uncheck enable morph, and then you'd have you could select as many morphings, as many morphing animations as you'd like. Okay, so those are the options there. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I know I went over quite a bit of information, and at one point, I don't know how clear it was, but I didn't showcase the morphing, and I kind of tried to explain everything before showcasing the morphing. But if you have any questions about that, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about anything that I just went over, or any questions in general about the Muse Morph there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show, and I'm going to try to move fairly quickly through this. We do have a more advanced option for the Muse Morph. So if I type in Muse Morph again in the library panel, I'll bring in the Muse Morph sequence with shape index. Now what the shape index does, and I'll actually show it rather than try to explain it all before I kind of demonstrate it. So there we've added the Muse Morph, and it's basically the same as the sequence, but we now have this new option here called Enable Find Shape Index. And I'll go ahead and enable all the morphs here, just like this. And perfect. Okay, so if we go to File, Preview Page in Browser, we see it morphs. Now, if you notice, it morphs a little bit differently than how the other one was morphing. I have an example here of how it morphs. Without the shape index, the Morph SVG plugin by the Morph SVG plugin by Greensock is actually really sophisticated. And if it doesn't have the shape index, if you don't set the shape index, it knows the best shape index for the best morph. That's why you'll get a really clean morph if you don't have the shape index. But if there was the instance where you really wanted to control from what point on the path the morphing starts, then you could use with shape index. And I'll explain all of that right now so it makes more sense. So let's say between morph 1 and morph 2, I wanted to know the shape index. All I'd have to do for the first morph is click on Enable Find Shape Index, and I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. And if we notice, we have the morphing, and this is where it's a bit more advanced because you can't have the other morphings enabled if you want to know exactly, if you want to clearly see the shape index between 2 morphs. Okay, so I've disabled all the morphs except for the first morph here, and I'm going to say for this visible option, there's this option in the sequence with shape index where you can disable, you can have the first SVG element not visible, and I'll show you why that's important. Because if I go to File, Preview Page in Browser, we have the morphing there between the bear and the moose, just like that. Okay, and I'm actually going to take some scroll space off, just like this, and we'll move this up so we can see the shape index. Okay, and I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. Okay, so here we have the shape index. Because we had so much scroll space, it went to the bottom of the site, but you can just remove the scroll space so you can work with the shape index here. All right, so this is the shape index, and what it's saying here is that -4 is the best shape index for the bear to the moose morphing. But if I change the shape index, we can see that this little dot goes around the SVG, and this first one is actually the bear. We can't see it because it's just morphing off, initially, but you can change the shape index and pick the best place for the bear to morph into the moose. This is a little bit more advanced, so it might take a moment to start playing with it, but basically you can just change this dot from where the bear morphs into the moose. And with different SVG elements, this is actually a little bit more clearer, but because the bear is, kind of has a lot of paths to it, or a lot of points, it kind of just looks a little bit, you can't really make out the bear into the moose. So here we have a shape index at 59. So I'll go back into the widget, and for the morph one, for the shape index, I'll say 59. And then I'll uncheck enable find shape index. I'll say for the first one, I'll say visible, because now we want to see the bear morph into the moose. So I'll go to file, preview page in browser, and there we see the morphing is a little bit different, because the point is like here for the bear, and then it morphs into the moose. All right, so that looks good. And we can play with the timing. So let's set the timing to 5, and we'll enable find shape index. I'll go to file, preview page in browser. Yeah, and if you change the speed of the morphing, it's actually helpful, because then you can actually see the bear, which is, or you can see it a bit better. So there we have, if you enable shape index, you'll see the outlines of two SVG elements, and then you can change the shape index by going plus or minus here in the shape index, which is really great. All right, so that's a little bit more advanced. I'll probably make a few more video tutorials working with the shape index. I did want to go over it in this video tutorial, just to kind of demonstrate the shape index and show that you can have a lot of control over the way the SVG elements morph. Okay, and this visible option here is if you're finding the shape index between the morph 2 element and the morph 3 element. If you're finding the shape index for these two, I'll just enable this, enable find shape index, and I'll uncheck enable find shape index here. You can only have one shape index at a time, so you just want to make sure that the other shape indexes are unchecked if you want to use the shape index for that particular morph. So this morph is between SVG element morph 2 and SVG element morph 3, and here are the morphing options. So I'll set the duration to 5 so we can see it a little bit better, and I'll go to file, preview page in browser, and there we have it between the moose and the swan. This is a really good example because we can see the moose and it turns into the swan, and if we change the shape index, we see that dot moving around, and we can see this dot connects with the swan dot right here, which looks great. So let's say I wanted to actually put that shape index into play. I'd just remember this number 7. I'd go into the widget options for morph 2. I'd say shape index 7. Then I'll uncheck enable find shape index, and we'll make the first SVG element visible. And now if I go to file, preview page in browser, we have that one there. I made it 5 seconds, so it's a little bit slow. And then we have the moose to the swan, and we can picture like a dot from here to here going to the swan like it showed in the shape index. Okay, so that was a little bit more advanced, but that is the shape index there. If you have any questions about that, you can just ask me in the comment section below as well. All right, so we've gone over the shape index, we've gone over the widget options, and the last widget that I'll show is the Muse Morph single. So I'll just click, hold, and drag and place onto the Adobe Muse website. And this is just if you want to morph between two SVG elements. So here's the first SVG element, and here's the second SVG element. And here are all the options. They're very similar to the sequence, but it's just for two elements, and then we have the on-scroll options here. So I'll go ahead and click on this SVG element. I'll right-click, edit HTML. And for this, I only need morph 1 and morph 2. So I'm going to look in my code in here, and I might not be able to. So what I'll actually do, because there was just a lot of code there, I'll go into Adobe Illustrator, I'll say cancel, and then I'll just make these morph 3 to the last morph not visible. So we just have the bear and the moose. So I'll go to File, Export, we'll say SVG. SVG, I'll say SVG image 1, or yeah, 1, and then export, then show code. And we can see we don't have as much code, and I'll say Command A to copy, or to select, and then Command C to copy. And then I'll go into Adobe Muse, I'll go to Edit HTML, and I'll paste that code right in there and click OK. So now we just have the moose and the bear, and because it's a single morph, we just need morph 1 and morph 2, and that's why I removed the other elements in there. Okay, so we have the instance number, element 1 is morph 1, element 2 is morph 2, and that's basically it. So if I go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, we see the morphing just like that. And what's great about the single morph is that it does include the shape index as well. So if I click Enable Shape Index, I can go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and I can see the shape index for the morphing. So I can change it to anything, and I can see the shape index for the morphing. And let me set the duration to a little bit higher. So I'll go in here in duration and I'll set it to 10, and this should allow us to see the morphing a little bit better because it's taking longer, so we can see the bear and the moose morphing into each other. Yep, so then you can play with the shape index. So if I go into the widget options and I change the shape index to 47, I'll uncheck Enable Find Shape Index, and that's basically it. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and then we have a different morph there. And let's change the duration to 2 seconds. So you can set a delay, you can set a repeat. -1 repeats infinitely. You can set a repeat delay, so you can wait before it repeats again. And you can set the initial fill color, so I'll set it to orange, and then green here. And then you can say on load, on hover, on click, or on scroll. You can have it continuously play on hover, and you can enable reverse play here. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser, and there we have the different colors, and it morphs into each other, and it morphs a little bit differently. And you can set the easing option too. So if I had like an elastic easing here, that could be really fun. So I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser. There we go. It goes off the artboard because it's like it's elastic, so it's you could add more space to the artboard to make sure that if it is elastic, it doesn't go off the artboard. So that can be really fun there. We can set ease in out. We can set bounce just like that. And I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser. So we have a little bounce there, and that's nice because it doesn't go off the artboard. Elastic just kind of stretches it out off the artboard there. Okay, so I think I've covered everything with the widget. We added, the add first before we started with the widget. We went over the sequence with shape index, and the single Muse morph. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I did go over a lot of information in this video tutorial, but it is a very fun widget and could really add a lot of styling and a lot of interest and effects to your Adobe Muse website. And again, it is responsive because it is an SVG. It responds to the browser width. All right, and even if you add breakpoints, so I'll say 768, go to File, Preview Page, and Browser. The breakpoints don't affect the responsiveness of the SVG image here, and it keeps morphing. All right, so there it is. And again, this is the only widget that's not part of the Muse for You subscription, because you do, to actually access or use the Morph SVG plugin from Greensock, you need the Greensock membership at greensock.com. So if you go to, I'll go to greensock.com, and then here I'll go to Club Greensock, and the Shockingly Green, if you view the features, it includes the Morph SVG plugin. I've actually been in contact with the good folks at Greensock. They've been really great, and they've actually allowed for me to be able to offer this to the Adobe Muse community. So I'm really excited to be offering this widget. I think it's a great effect, and Greensock is just an amazing technology. Everything they do is amazing, and they really are changing the way animations are showcased or made on the web, and they just have really great technology. Muse Motion 2 is Greensock, and now the Morph SVG plugin is Greensock as well. All right, so that's a lot of fun there. Greensock is just really great, and yeah, I'm really happy to be offering this widget. So that's it for this video tutorial. Again, to access this widget, you simply go to museforyoushop.com, and then here you can click on the pop-up And then for the Muse Morph plugin, it is the only widget that's not a part of the Muse for You subscription. You can just click here on Muse Morph SVG Morphing. It is $22. And again, here I wrote this is the only widget not part of the Muse for You subscription, but it is a great technology and it's really fun to add to your website. So again, you can view all the features here, the widget options, the preview page here. Looks good. I'll make the browser kind of a little bit bigger there. I'll go back to shop. And then if you'd like to purchase the widget, you can simply click add to cart and purchase the widget. If you'd like to get access to all of the other widgets in the shop, you can simply subscribe and get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal as well. So that's it for this video tutorial. Again, I do this to help you build awesome websites without code. If you like this video tutorial, you can subscribe below. Also in the show more section below are links to other resources and links to museforyoushop.com. So again, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.